organization offers free mammography screenings for uninsured women, offers assistance to the Latinx community with no questions asked, and is pledged to eradicate cervical cancer right here in Chicago.
The Metropolitan Chicago Breast Cancer Force.
Metropolitan Task Force of Chicago, right?
The Force of Chicago Breast Cancer for Chicago.
That's why we're changing our name to Equal Hope. New name, same mission, to eradicate healthcare disparities in Chicago.
Chicago Breast Cancer Task Force.
Chicago Metropolitan Task Force to Kill Breast Cancer.
And hello, welcome to the show. I'm Dana Devine. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Did I say Happy New Year? This is the first time we have been together this year. Happy New Year. So glad that you have joined us here today. As usual, after 10 years of proven success in reducing breast cancer deaths for African American women in Chicago, after 10 years of providing free mammographies or mammograms for uninsured or underinsured women here in Chicago, after navigating thousands of women to the resources they need and deserve, the Metropolitan Chicago Breast Cancer Task Force has rebranded. We are now called Equal Hope. Equal Hope, that's right. Equal Hope. We've expanded our mission, we've expanded our footprint, and we are now going to raise awareness about the alarming rise of cervical cancer in Chicago, which is almost 100% preventable. Did you hear that? Almost 100% preventable. It is not a hereditary cancer. And we, right here at Equal Hope, we've pledged to eradicate cervical cancer in Chicago in the next 10 years. And we need you and all your friends to help us in this mission to eradicate cervical cancer right here in Chicago within the next 10 years. Did you know that in Australia, they virtually eliminated cervical cancer from their country? How about that? In Rwanda, a developing country in Africa, they have almost eradicated cervical cancer. So I think we can do it, Chicago. I think we can do it. Same great mission, same great care, more great services, equalhope.org. If you need our services, well, you know what you can do. You can call us at 312-942-3368, or you can stop by equalhope.org. We have a navigation team waiting to support you, Latina navigation team also. So there's no excuse. If you haven't had your mammogram in the last year and you're over 40, make sure you call us today. And insurance is not going to be the excuse. Dr. Martin Luther King said, and this is, celebrating his birthday still, of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. And that's what we believe here. Equal because we're committed to connecting everyone with the best possible health care, and hope. Well, hope because we believe everyone deserves hope for the future, especially when they're confronted with a difficult illness. It's January. Did you know that? And what is January? January is Cervical Cancer Awareness Month. And we are celebrating and we are increasing our awareness on cervical cancer. Chicago, unfortunately, has cervical cancer rates that are 39% above the average and a death rate that's 61% above the national average. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. We're a call-in show. If you want to call in, then you should do so. 738-1060, 312-738-1060 if you want to jump in on this conversation. Happy New Year. I said it again. No insurance, no documentation, no problem. We are here to serve you. Equal Hope, equalhope.org. We've changed our name, not our mission. And this is my favorite part of the show. We get to meet another shero, another survivor, another woman who has demonstrated that tenacity, perseverance, hope, trust, all that roll into one makes you a survivor. Our shero today is none other than the Chicago Heights City Clerk, Lori Wilcox. Woo! She's a compassionate servant leader. She's a single mother of 3, a combat war veteran. How about that? And a cancer survivor, a cervical cancer survivor. Our very first one on the show. Put your hands together for Miss Lori Wilcox, darling.
Hi.
It's a cervical cancer show, not a breast show. Oh my gosh, Lori, watch those girls. Those girls. You never know what they're gonna do. They're unpredictable, aren't they? So, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You look
How are
amazing.
Thank you, Dana.
You never look like, I guess the key is don't look like what you've been through, right?
No, you're not supposed to. You pick it up and you keep moving.
And you keep moving.
Put a smile on and your red lipstick.
And you keep it going. So, Lori, I know that one thing is crystal clear, and that is your testimony can save somebody's life here today.
It can.
And early detection is the key for breast cancer, cervical cancer, any life-threatening illness, anything that is a pest, you want to nip it in the bud as soon as possible. I just want you, I'm a breast cancer survivor. I can't speak with you on cervical cancer. All I can do is listen. But if you can start from the beginning and share with Chicago how you were diagnosed, when, and your story.
Okay. I was at work. I was in a meeting, and my side was hurting. My side had been hurting for about 4 weeks. And I thought maybe I hadn't drank enough water, or maybe I was just stressed out. And so during my lunch period, I went to see the doctor, and of course they ran various tests, and he was just like quiet, and I'm like, well, I need to go back to work. And so I went back to work, and he said, well, we need to do an ultrasound, and congratulations that you're expecting. I said, oh, okay. So I went back to work, came back, did the ultrasound, and a few days later he called me back into his office to let me know that my test had came back positive for cancer. And he said, you're going to surgery tomorrow. And I said, I have to prepare my life. I can't go into surgery tomorrow. He said, well, you know what? You have a baby in your fallopian tube, and we need to take that out, but we also need to look at some other things.
So was this your first child?
That was that child would have been my 4th child.
Okay. So you thought you were going in for stomach pain. It ended up that you were pregnant.
Yes. And
also in the beginning stages of cervical cancer.
Yes.
And so what did they see?
A few days later, after they did the initial surgery, he said during that surgery he did some biopsies. So he did about 6 different biopsies around the area, and he said everywhere he looked it was pretty much cancerous, and so I needed to come back and have more surgeries.
Mm-hmm. Were you in your 20s, 30s?
Oh, geez. I'd like to say I would like to say my 30s.
Early 30s?
Yep.
Early 30s. Okay. So, bada bing, bada boom. Like breast, I'm sure you had to make a lot of very quick decisions.
Quick decisions that I was not, you can't even plan for it. You can't even plan for it.
So, what were your treatment options?
So it was locally in the area, so it had not metastasized or spread it anywhere, which meant that they can just go in and use the Da Vinci and just start cutting things out and shaving. So we did like a leap. We did they removed the cervix, and then a few months later we had a full hysterectomy and more surgeries. So about 8 surgeries later, I'm cancer free.
Uh-huh. And so, children after that?
No more children.
No more children after that.
I have 3 children, and that was a part of the conversations. I can't have any more children, and they said, Lori, you have 3 beautiful children that you have to live for. So why worry about children that you can't have when you have 3 that you need to live for? Mm-hmm. And that was the aha moment. I already have 3 children. Mm-hmm. God, that blessing has already came. Mm-hmm. Now it's time for me
take care of yourself.
To take care of me.
Uh-huh. So, now, for your, did you have a team approach? I know in breast, I'm learning. We're all learning on cervical cancer here. I'm learning. So I know for breast, there's the oncologist, there's a team, and there's a whole pathology team. And so is it the same for cervical cancer?
It is the same. They have to have a pathologist, oncologist, a gyne-oncologist. So my doctor is actually a oncologist, a gyne-oncologist. Let me just shorten the word. And they even asked me if I wanted to speak to psychologist or psych.
Important.
Yes.
Important. Very
Because your
important.
mental health is important.
So, okay. So, how long had you been having regular pap smears?
I had not been having regular pap smears. It had been about 5 years since I had a pap smear. But there were symptoms of things going on in my body that I just ignored.
Like,
just the pain in my side for 4 weeks. And it was like a smell of death. No matter what I did, it was like death was growing inside of me.
I believe that odors are very important in the game of cancer, and you really have to pay attention to how things smell. Absolutely.
It's dying flesh.
Right. That's right. So, okay. So, bada bing, bada boom. You almost left me speechless just for a second because I'm just processing the information that you've shared with us. Okay, so now we have this HPV vaccine. Are you familiar with that? The human papilloma. The human papilloma virus. There is a vaccination that will help you not get the HPV virus. And it's an HPV vaccine. I said that right? Because you got to get this right. I said that right. So nowadays, most of us have had these abnormal pap smears. So you had gone to 5 years prior. And was your pap smear normal then?
My pap smear was normal.
Okay. So I think the protocol over 21 is to get a mammogram a pap smear every 3 years. Is that correct? Every year.
Every year. I was going every year.
Every year.
Yes.
Every year for the pap. But then at the doctor, they can recommend
every 3 years.
Every 3 years. So you go and let them tell you to come back, not every year. But I think every year is a real good idea. So, okay. So you had missed 5 years. And ladies, that's the lesson here. You can't miss that pap smear. 5 years can make a difference. And now there's the HPV vaccine that will help you guard against getting the HPV virus, which is one of the main strains of cervical cancer.
Correct.
Whew. And we have to vaccinate our children. And that is the number one way to help eradicate cervical cancer here in Chicago is the HPV vaccination. And the protocol is after 9 years old for girls and boys. Girls and boys, because boys also carry the HPV virus. And the HPV virus is responsible for penile cancer, vulva cancer, anal cancer, throat cancer, quite a few different cancers. So it's very important to get that vaccine, young mommies, for your children, starting at the age of 9. Whew.
I know this is heavy.
Well, yeah, and more so than I think breast cancer, because it deals with the sexual part of, breasts are, everybody's aware of breasts. But when you start talking about cervical cancer, you start dealing into people's personal lives.
Yes, and I was married at the time, and so then you wonder or you question yourself. But HPV can be in your body for years, dormant.
Up to 20 years.
And you can just get sick or be under a lot of stress, and then it can just metastasize into something more than just the virus being in your body.
Did you hear that, ladies? I want to put this, remind you that if you are experiencing anything, like any symptoms for an extended amount of time, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, if you have any unusual odors, you might want to call us, 312-942-3368, or visit equalhope.org for a free Pap screening, a free mammogram if you are uninsured or underinsured or simply unsure. So ladies, one point I want to really make sure that everyone hears is that I think that women over a certain age feel like they are immune to getting the HPV virus, which is the cause of cervical cancer. I don't think they even say, oh, I can't get cervical cancer after a certain amount of time. They're really associated with, well, I'm not getting any kind of like sexually transmitted disease or anything because I've been married for 35 years. And so when the doctor says cervical cancer to a married woman,
that was my response. I said, I'm married. But if you're not educated on the virus being in your body for up to 20 years, you'll just automatically assume, and then just the stigma behind it, which makes it tough to have these conversations with your family, your friends, and even, I'm talking to Chicagoland.
Right, exactly right. That is the hush-hush with the cervical cancer. Is just, you have to admit a lot of things in talking about it out loud. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story right here publicly. So after your lifestyle, how did your lifestyle change after you went through treatment? Let me back up. How long was the treatment? What was the...
The surgeries happened over like a 3-year period, 3.5 year period before I received that letter in the mail after. So during this process, you go for pap smears. Well, you go into your oncologist every 3 months now. So those annual visits or 6-month visits or 3-year visits, they become every 3 months until you get your first letter of you're all clear.
So what is the treatment, though? After surgery, is there a pill that you take?
For me, it was no pill because they caught it at such an early stage. Other individuals may have to take pills, but for me, my doctors, amazing doctors, University of Chicago, I'm sorry.
Hey, I understand.
Yeah.
Somebody saved your life. You tend to think they're amazing. I don't know.
And it's funny, I went to visit her today. However, her only concern was, Lori, make sure you show up.
Every 3 months.
Make sure you show up every 3 months. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that you're going to get this all clear. No more abnormal cells, no signs of HPV in your body, and not show up. And so my doctor has become my best friend. We literally talk about a lot of things.
It's amazing how that happens. That I love my team of doctors, and I drop off cookies. I understand. Do you know 80% of us sexually active women and men have been exposed to the HPV virus?
Correct.
80%. So ladies, when you have gone to the gynecologist and your pap smear is returned and they've sent you that little letter saying, well, there was not a normal pap smear, we just need to keep an eye on it, and then you return and then the next one is normal. That abnormal pap is, like I said, 80% of sexually active people will have an abnormal pap or are carrying the HPV virus. It just manifests differently in different bodies.
Yes, and I work in a stressful environment, so.
So, right. Politics, is it? How about that? Well, let me ask you this. Let me say this. Did you know that the HPV virus is transmitted through skin to skin? They say sexual contact, but it does not have to be intercourse. I think that's such an important message.
Correct.
You do not have to have intercourse to get the HPV virus, which ultimately can manifest into cancer over an extended amount of time because you didn't know you had it. So in 20 years, and it shows up as throat cancer, and you're wondering what happened. So I joke, but I say there is something wrong with a little bumping and grinding, because nowadays you can end up with cervical cancer, and it's just the truth. And young ladies, I love music and I'm an advocate for free speech, but a lot of these songs sell sexual activities,
Correct.
for young girls that they can't do all that. Did he have the HPV virus check? Did he get a vaccine? Ladies, you got to ask that question.
Young girls and guys.
And girls and guys, that's
Yes,
right.
I have 2 sons and a daughter, and they've both been vaccinated.
Absolutely. All 3 of my children. And there's a stigma that the vaccination is dangerous.
Well, we're not gonna know. There's a stigma that every vaccination is
It's dangerous,
dangerous.
right.
There's a stigma that
That's true. And ladies, don't buy
food
into
is
that.
dangerous.
Right. The Center for Disease Control has given a nice, great stamp on the vaccination for HPV, and do not let that stop you from immunizing your child from a myriad of cancers later on in life. So what you do today will protect your child in 20 years, and no one will even know. You walking around, you don't even know that you're walking around with this strain of HPV that may cause a cancer in your life. So, how has cancer helped you identify your inner strength?
I like to say I found my passion, I found my voice through this. I started writing, I started talking about it more, and me sharing my story can save someone's life. So if I have to take the hit for saving one life, then I've served my purpose.
And I have another question I like to ask. Do you recall any traumatic experience that had occurred in your life, up to 2 years prior to your diagnosis? Well, you said stress or
2 years prior to the diagnosis.
any loss?
2012, so let's...
Now, my theory might not be the same with cervical cancer, because cervical cancer stems from a virus where I think breast cancer may stem from some emotional baggage. I know this is my talking, y'all. This is not medical. This is Miss Dana on the TV thinking of how I got breast cancer and what caused it for me, or how was I susceptible in any type of way. But cervical cancer, which is more virus related, it is not a hereditary disease. It's not. So I don't know if my theory works the same way.
It could work the same. It's virus related. It could be in your body dormant. Your chemistry changes. You're stressed out. 2 years prior to being diagnosed, I got involved in politics. And the stress level changed. I was teaching. I was a librarian at an elementary school. So 2 years prior to that, I started, I got involved in politics. And so the stress level shot through the roof.
Right, we had another guest on our show who was in politics, and right at the beginning of her term, she said that stress was high, and that's when her breast cancer diagnosis occurred.
So your theory could be right.
So my theory could be right. I think, they say it's stress and traumatic. I'm thinking loss of a home, sometimes the loss of a loved one will trigger that type of stress. But I will keep asking that question because I just want to know. And how do you self-advocate now?
I take care of myself now. I take care of myself. I will stop and take a break. I'll stop and take a nap. I will take time off, and I make sure I go and visit my doctors.
Yes, and that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Did you hear what she said? Make sure you stop and visit your doctors. And, I say it all the time, your birth month is like the best month to really take care of your health because you can remember. Listen, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's Lori Wilcox, ladies and gentlemen, Chicago Heights City Clerk and a cervical cancer survivor and a compassionate servant. Thank you so much for stopping by. I want to thank my producer, Donna Lynn Schaefer. Yay! Our music producer, Grammy winner Maurice Joshua. And, of course, Equal Hope. And if you need a mammogram, a free mammogram, or a free pap smear, and if you've heard anything that is ringing a bell for you, give us a call right now, 312-942-3368, or visit equalhope.org. We have a Latina navigation team that is ready and willing to support and assist you. Thank you. And until we meet again next month, same time, same place, the third Tuesday of the month, 5 o'clock, live right here, KNTV. And you never know who the guest is going to be. So show up. Thanks for joining us.